It has been over 2 months since that incident on Halloween, a holiday that leaves an acidic curl within my stomach. I can never forget that night. That happened to me and my brother, and what we had to do to escape that intoxicating environment that entrapped us. What made the experience horrendous is not what we done to leave out of here with our heads intact, but deeds I didn't expect my brother to do that forces me to vomit. However, I won't continue to grow and overcome my obstacles if I kept these demonic memories inside. It's a challenge I must overcome, according to my therapist, at least. It's part of an exercise that I'm doing, and I must have it completed this week. So pardon of the spelling and the grammar along the way. My name is Rawak. Funny name, I know. It has remained a traditional name for many countries in Africa, as I am a third-generation migrant from Ethiopia. It's another story for another time. Anyway, it has been a while since I visited a haunted attraction, as I usually go with my older brother, since he always offers to come to these events, and of course pays for food. His name is Chris. He's an introverted guy who doesn't say much. He prefers being emotionally distant from other people. He'd rather watch horror movies and anime over any social event. That's just all I know he does. I'm not that close to him since we lived in different homes because we are half siblings and took different responsibilities as young adults. Just too busy to get to know one another like we used to before. It's quite a complicated thing to explain. He works at a hospital full time as a nurse, and I'm a senior athlete in high school applying to a variety of universities. He is no stranger when it comes to confrontation, which made me feel comfortable to go behind his back whenever danger approaches. Because of his fearless persona, it can lead him to a lot of trouble at times, but that's the part that always made me felt safe around him and give him the utmost respect. Until now. I don't know. It's just, I saw another side of him that I had never witnessed before. On October 31st, my brother called me after school and asked if I wanted to go to this haunted house in Rosemont. It's a small town in a desert 60 miles up north from Los Angeles. Since my friends are either trick-or-treating or going to some Project X party, I decided to save my brain cells. He found a haunted attraction website where it listed reviews of a variety of houses and attractions. He found an ad which stated to be a mobile attraction that travels all over the states, giving participants $2,000 prize just to be present in the attraction. It was voted to be the most gut-wrenching experience in national American history. Knowing my brother, a weird cat he was, he would ingest random info from unknown sites and programmers. For all I know, he may have access to the dark web. Yet, whenever our interests involve with money, who will be a fool to deny that? The event began at 10 p.m. So I hopped in the shower and got ready in my urban nightlife gear. Just looked fresh. My brother arrived and picked me up half an hour before the show. The ride took 20 minutes to get over there. During the drive, we just had little small talk about the weather and how I was doing in basketball. He already knew that I received one acceptance letter from Pepperdine University and understood that I'm waiting for other options to come before I decided to move. It was rather a stale conversation. We're just two different people with different interests, I guess. I always appreciate the support he gave and never missed a game at my high school. So we finally arrived at the trailer home in the middle of the desert. We checked the address and saw that we stood corrected. Bro, this doesn't seem right. I don't like how we're the only ones out here with only one light source. I stated with a knot in my throat. Don't be a chump, man. We're gonna have the best scare in our lives. The worst thing that could happen is you hopping and crying like your man Future from this camera shot. This is gonna be you. Bro, you wish you could hop like this. Okay, chump, Chris replied with a grin. We parked on the shoulder of the road as we spotted 8 other guys standing in front of the trailer door. How come there's not a lot of people showing up, I wondered. So we got out of the car and started to approach them. Are you the only ones out here? My brother asked. There was a lot of other people earlier somehow as they went in, but they're just gone. Didn't even see them get out. I'm telling you, this house got some reputation, so I'm not missing this shit. One of the guys yelled enthusiastically. He stood to be 6'3", built with a football player physique. How come, I asked, not having a clue how a tin can house on wheels from Dukes of Hazzard would scare so many people. The last event was hosted in Vegas, and a couple people came out speaking gibberish, all cut up and bruised due to falling so much. It was so bad they had to go to therapy just to get everything unkinked from their system. It's even scary when all time is stopped and couldn't explain what happened, replied a smaller guy who looked like a young Bill Gates in the making. The last sentence raised my eyebrow, but I digressed and proceeded to shake hands with them. They introduced themselves as Mark, the football guy, and Steven, the small Bill Gates one. Later, a stout, swarthy Latino guy introduced himself with an enthusiastic smile. My name is Juan, and I swear you're gonna have a great time. They all happened to be one party, so we happened to chat with them for a couple minutes. The trailer door crept open by itself, with no one inside present. Without hesitation, the whole party entered inside together. Inside appeared to be a small living room with a rocking chair and a couch placed parallel to each other. What stuck out was the dark hallway between them, and the tea table resides held a 3-page letter in the middle of the room. My brother picked it up. It announced that we entered the dark hallway one by one and will continue to review the letter when we see everyone on the other side. He proceeded to walk first into the black room as his body is consumed by the darkness. I was the last person to go after the party left. I was quite anxious to exit the creepy fluorescent dim-lit living room so no actor popped out from behind. So I crept inside the hallway. After I turned right, the door closed abruptly behind me without light present. So I pulled out my phone and clicked on the flashlight to see where I was going. I turned my head left and right, but from the corner of my eye, I spotted a glimpse of a tall man in a white gown stared right at me, with blood trickled down from his head and more trails spewing out from its mouth. Without delay, I dashed as fast as I could, not knowing whether it's an actor chasing me or a hologram floating. Whatever it was, it looked damn real. Before I could pivot to the next direction, I tripped and fell through a low vent which sent me down about 30 feet down through the darkness. Never had I screamed so loud, like riding Goliath at Magic Mountain for the first time. Yet it didn't compare on what the dip had for me. Luckily, I landed in what appeared to be a dirty clothes hamper that they had in a rundown Chinese sweatshops. I scurried out and found myself in a dim-lit medieval-like dungeon, a setting that a king would have as a torture chamber. I exited through the gate in front of me and found myself in a hallway with 4 jail cells and a large office in front of it. Everyone is present wearing all white clothes. Besides me, my brother, Mark, and Juan conformed to a beige night watch attire. My brother approached me and gave me the white uniform. It would be strange to change in front of the guys in the hallway, so I proceeded back to the dungeon. So he, Mark, and Juan got to be guards, as we're supposed to be the prisoners? That is a peculiar way to begin a fright fest. but whatever makes us money and a good scare. My brother announces the letter in front of everyone. The rules are simple. We volunteered for once-in-a-lifetime fright for each of us to earn cold cash. We are here to stay until morning, or do as the letter instructed us to do. The decision is up to you. No one must sleep. Clocks and watches are unavailable due to lack of reception. In order to tell time, a special candle will be available above us, which has a property to make the wax pop every 60 minutes. We are assigned a set schedule. If we follow them correctly and do what the correctional officer says, we may leave early. A camera is hidden to record all our movements, and only rule for the officers. You are the authority. Set an example for these people and make sure every order is marked completed. If any problem arises, I suggest that you do not hit anyone or anything with the batons you're holding. If so, follow page 3. That last sentence sends chills right down my spine. What happens if Chris does? Do they use it to fight that ghost thing earlier? Why do they even have it at all? This shouldn't be that bad. I'm still confused. But we persisted anyway. The first objective we had was to go to the beds in our cells. Chris strolls in after us. All beds must be neat. Blankets must be tucked tight with no folds in between. We straightened the beds as instructed. Officer Mark walked over and inspected them. He gave a poker face to a guy with shaggy hair as he saw a fold in the blanket. "Hey man, I need you to straighten that fold, please." "Oh, it's only one fold," the shaggy haired dude replied with a chuckle. "We have to follow the instructions accordingly. One fold alone won't make time go by. You want that money?" "No duh." "Then I suggest that you do so," Mark replied with a stern tone that demeans your identity's existence. He gave the guy a cold stare, which compelled him to straighten the bed. He walked out from the cell and stood next to my brother with arms crossed. "All of you will sit on your beds until the candle clicks. We stayed to make sure nothing goes wrong. Raise your hand if you need to go to the restroom," Chris reported. "How long would that be? The clock on my phone stopped. No service," I asked. "Whenever it pops," Juan remarked. We all sat on our beds, subconsciously counting by seconds, yet felt like 3 hours had passed. My brother stood out there like a stone statue as the other two perused the area. I couldn't see their eyes with the cat bills shouting over him. Just sat stared at him. Watched his baton gripped by his right hand, tight enough to pop a vein. Suddenly, the candle finally clicked, and my brother announced everyone out from their cells to do some jumping jacks. "After me. 1, 2, 3, Mark ordered. Me and 5 other guys jumped and crossed our appendages. A guy on my far right tripped over and landed on his stomach, so Mark proceeded to pick him up. "We gotta do it again, from the top. 1, 2, 3. We continued for 20 more reps, raised with one leg up. The whole group had to do it at once. We did the objective up until number 17, as we heaved and gasped until Steven crumbled. "Get up, Steven, we gotta do the whole thing again," Mark commanded. "Man, I'm tired. I'll have an asthma attack if I continue. We can't afford to stay any longer. Bitching out from one exercise won't cut it." "I can't, please," Steven whined. "Just 2 more, I'll have the baton to elevate your leg." Without a word, his friend proceeded. Juan places the baton not around his shin, but his groin. Steven's torso squeezes to the ground and pushes back off a couple times, constricted every vessel in his body, frying his ruby red face and violet cheeks. He exasperated a big breath on his final rep and left him to crumble to the stone floor. His inspirations were rapid, like he was hyperventilating, forced him to clench his left pectoralis with his right hand. "You did it, never say never. Adrenaline lets you know that you're alive," Juan growled abruptly. "That's ridiculous. I'm out of here." Steven stormed out of the hallway to turn into the dungeon. We all stood up to wait the next order. I looked at my brother to caught his pink lips curl into a hardened scowl. Something bugged him. I turned to see Steven ram to the hallway wall in a mad panic. "I can't get out!" he shrilled. With fury, banged his head against the wooden wall. Chris and Mark rushed over and pinned him down to the floor. Steven panted and scrambled over the floor, instinctually knew that his heart could explode in any minute. My brother would never pin anybody else unless they attacked him first. Mark placed a knee on his back. We knew very well of his strength, so I rushed him over to shove him off from his side. However, my brother instantly launched his baton straight into my chest, shoved me down. "I can't have you intervene," he said. "Dude, he could suffocate at any moment," I exclaimed. "He needs to calm down. He didn't put his knee near this thoracic cavity. He needed to follow orders, and he didn't do them. Is that a reason to hit me?" My brother stood up, widened his shoulders, as he took a couple slow steps towards me. Mark and Juan picked up Steven from both ends and carried him near the cells. I shrugged past my brother, despite his intimidating presence, and entered to the dungeon. I walked straight into the dim-lit room as the medieval brick walls covered in cobwebs and long tables and gave a gothic atmosphere that haunted me. I walked up the wooden steps for the door ahead as noises creaked behind my eardrum in each step. I gripped the handle and pulled the best of my ability. The door wouldn't open. I stomped out of the area and walked to the hallway. "We're locked in and bailing all the time," I yelled. It struck to me as I realized I don't even know if the candle clicked or not. How could we know more activities if there is no time to depend? Steven kneeled with both knees on the ground, tilted in front of Officer Mark and Juan. The rest of the inmates locked inside the cells behind them. They screamed at them and stated that was uncalled for. The enraged Latino swung his baton to the cage, gave it a dominant thwack noise to vibrate off of it. So I rushed over. "Chris, this is going too far." "It's fine, we're going over the instructions as followed, and we have 2 more activities left. We have no time to follow." Chris looked behind and gave a side eye, thought the situation is not as harmful as it seemed. My hormones suddenly flushed over my face, exerted heat from my pores. We lost time because of his insensitive recklessness. Everyone was just as stirred as he was. It caused my conscience to snap and forced my right hand to club my brother's face. His hat flew off, but after being thrown a foot away, his eyebrows clenched together, squinted his eyelids low enough to see only the black pupils of his eyes, and his lips, raised sufficiently to reveal the whites of his teeth, bared them. He gripped the baton hard enough to see the blood vessels contract in his right hand. He was never the one to start danger, but now his gaze was enough to kill. "Come here, you little punk," he growled ferociously. He slammed his baton at the walls back and forth. I accelerated my legs out from the hallway and left me to re-enter the dungeon. I leapt on the steps and climbed up to the barrage on the door. I searched around the dim room for somewhere to hide. I clung to the handle like a toddler, struggling to open the door. I tilted my head back and spotted my brother's shadow thrashing around the hallway walls, side by side, heading towards the room. I continued to squat on the floor, persisted to get that door open. A sudden gust of wind rushed behind me, which led me to roll away from it as I witnessed an item crash at the door. I fell from the steps as I crashed all the way down to the wooden box beside it, and it led me to a 5-foot drop. I rolled along the steps as I crashed into the stone wall. I quickly jumped from the ground and dashed right in my direction despite the pain. I didn't know where I was exactly, but I continued down the dark area lighted by a navy blue hue. Click, clack, click, clack. My heart jolted, compelled me to run into the hallway. The hall is shaped more like a hollow cavern with sickles on the ceiling, something out of an Indiana Jones movie. I spotted a small tunnel a few feet away from me and slid into it to turn my body to prone position. Click, clack, click, clack. The sound surrounded the area, and loud footsteps stomped by me, like an angry elephant on a rampage. Without a blink, a figure in the white gown appeared across its back in front of me, and stood in the hall motionless. It still bared the vast bleeding scar on its head. It had no shoes or feet shown at the bottom of its gown. I moved toward a couple inches, yet it quickly turned in front to my location, with mouth wide open, oozing blood. It stood there for a couple minutes without a muscle twitch, and black shadows covered its eyes as if it's looking right through me, knowing where I was. I placed my hand over my mouth to prevent a breath being expelled and froze my body stuck in sweat. It sauntered away from the tunnel and exerted a loud, harpy screech as it cocked its head back multiple times. I remained in the tunnel for a couple more minutes to make sure that thing was gone. It felt like 1 hour from where I was. I never had felt this much fear in my whole life. After I regained my conscience and confidence, I finally crawled out from the hole and continued my journey back to the dungeon. The walk adjusted my eyes to the darkness, allowing me to observe the cobwebs stuck on stone walls and sickles become more elongated and sharpened. Footsteps were heard behind me, coming from a couple corners, so I remained to dash out there ASAP. I made a sharp turn in each direction. I found the steps back to the dungeon and scurried on the steps from the maze up there. After I re-entered back to the room, I dusted the dirt off from my uniform, so I continued to peruse around for a place to hide. My hair was yanked and my arm was suddenly pulled behind my back. It was the 2 inmates who proceeded to drag me along the broad hallway. The rest of the inmates remained stuck in their cells as my brother and the rest of the officers rested on the wall. They shoved me down to the floor next to Steven, with his head remained low, only allowed him to look at his knees as he licks the chapped pink of his lips to cure the dryness. My legs rattled as the officers reviewed the letter further and further. Juan raised his baton near his head. A figure tugged on the back of my belt magnetized me to my brother. Final task of the evening is the first officer who used the baton first must do one of the 2 tasks. You must dismantle the first prisoner who planned to escape. Be sure what is inside of him must come out. If you refuse, the baton must be entered through one hole of his own anatomy. Your authority must never be challenged. To cling to life is something to die for. This is your only way out. Mark stated the sentence with a shock within his voice. Juan gave my brother his baton and turned him towards me, and Steven's pasty powdered skin shivered out of fright. You gotta do it. If I were you, I'd stick it up in your bro and get it done, he said. Hell no, I roared. I scampered wildly, using every ounce of heat flown through my vessels to energize me. I flung my arms as fiercely as I could. However, I wasn't able to escape the inmates' tightened grips on my waistband of my pants. as they placed me flat on the ground, forced a cold pressure to my inflamed skin. "You serious?" My brother's voice grinned. "You had your cup of tea, motherfucker. Time to take your pick." "I can't, I won't." Juan's glare deepens. "If you don't do it, then I will. I won't allow you to attack Steven either," Mark responded. "I can't, man. This is too far off." "Forget this." Juan grabbed his arm and yanked it from him and quickly swung it toward me. Juan quickly got up and charged him to the wall. He yanked my brother toward us and forced him to stand on his own feet with his back hunched over. He took the baton and raised it to his face. "Please don't," Steven whimpered. "Move." Mark arrived to pull them apart. Before I could look up, bump! A noise roared in front of me. I peeked and spotted my brother, towering over Mark, with blood stained on his baton. "Please, don't, stop!" Devastation ran through his voice. Chris sucked in the humid air like a statue. He continued to slam his baton to his head with high velocity. As blood dripped from the head of the tool, I couldn't help but expel vomit over the floor. My brother swung the instrument 5 agonizing times, transformed his head to spaghetti mush. Strokes of blood spread all over the area, straight out of a fiasco painting. I vomited further as the dewy metallic scent crept up to my nostrils. I looked up at my brother to see a sight that I never thought to have seen in my life. His hands shook, body and face frozen, petrified, with eyes bulged out almost to the point of popping out. I'm not sure if he was terrified or enraged. Yet he froze into a stone. He just killed an innocent man like it was nothing. Nothing at all, with such ease. The rest of the inmates were silent as mannequins, and Rodriguez frozen stiff to the wall. Time had just stopped for 1 minute, contemplating what just happened. "Why did you do that? Mark, he's gone. You did that. You clubbed him to death." Chris bottled up his fist, which popped every vein in his hand. Juan walked up beside him with his head down. "We have one more task to do." I flung my arms to knock out the inmates with both hands, which allowed me to escape their grips easily. The inmates charged out from their cells and sent the gate to crash down to the solid cinder block floor with screech of bam commotion. They had all pounced on Chris and Juan, and I ran back to the dungeon to avoid the scene. I spotted the basement door beside the stair steps. I jumped off to dash across the dark blue lit maze. I came to stop at a dead end with the door in front of me. This entry had 3 locks, which can quickly turn left to unlock. After a couple clamps were loosened, the same rush of cold air swept past my earlobe. I looked behind me to see the figure in clear view, bald, with big black eyes, dressed in a white gown, stared dead at me. I looked past it to see an image of Mark, with a gash remained on his head, blood stained all over his face and uniform. My muscles ceased to twitch, and my vocal cords refused to say anything. My eyes began to split into 2 visions, as Mark and the figure walked closer, closer, and closer to me. I heard my heart pounding at a high speed. Their mouths began to widen open, revealing their blood-soaked tongues. The noise behind them eroded the illusion, slowly revealed the inmates stormed the cavern hall like raging bulls on a parade. I came back to my senses and unlocked the last remaining lock. I yanked the door out, which led me to be blinded by a bright orange light. The whole crowd charged me out from the door, which led all of us to slid down onto the dirt desert floor. I blinked my eyes and spotted my brother safe and intact next to me. We stayed in that trailer for what it seemed to be 12 hours, with no food, no water. We all looked at each other in disbelief. Without question, my brother and I headed straight to his car and drove down to the nearest police station. When we got there, we stayed over and answered questions about the whole incident. It took us almost half a day to even answer a couple of questions because somehow our memories seemed to be fogged up from the whole incident. Our father arrived and discussed with the detective about the files he had in his hands. He stated that the trailer had been abandoned for decades as it was once owned by fugitives who committed murder, taxidermy, and necrophilia during the 1960s. They were all captured, fortunately. Yet, somehow, someone founded the trailer and decided to make a haunted attraction out of it. Not with professional actors, but to use victims placed in higher authority to do monstrous deeds. So what the police found at the area that we went, the trailer was nowhere to be found. There was literally nothing in there. Everything was all cleaned out. No table, no sofa, even the dark hallway, there was no vent to lead us into. It was just unbelievable. Nothing was found. But the detectives managed to lend both me and my brother the $2,000 checks. The detectives managed to lend the $2,000 checks to our father. Unfortunately, my dad and I had to call a lawyer due to the fact my brother pleaded for a second-degree murder charge of Marcus Dallas. He still had blood on his hands when we arrived over there, so it was fair for the officers to track it and put him in the county jail. His court date is settled on December 12th. What frightened me about the whole experience is the way that this experience changed my brother from a benevolent person whom I knew since birth to a maleficent dictator that smashed a guy's head with ease. Not only him, but to Mark and Juan as well. But the more I think about it, it's not that the experience changed them. It makes a discovery on how the human mind is capable to adapt to survive in harsh conditions under unchecked authority. When you put a man into that situation, it doesn't change a man. It reveals to who they really are in that circumstance. Their true core being of their character. As no one stood up during those barbaric acts that only me and Steven did. What devastated us was there was no time to tell. And all I could think about was how much my brother had done to get us out of there alive. I don't know who was more terrifying, him or the figures that I saw last night. How many victims did it happen to? Was that Phantom one of them? There were just so many questions about that trailer that it just boggles me. Life is indeed something to die for when it justifies our means. History has shown us this, and this is what frightens me to this day.